Hi everyone, I'm Chloe and welcome to Mentors Connect. Before we get started with today's podcast episode, make sure to smash the like button, drop a subscribe. And now let's meet today's mentor. Today I'm very excited to have Jill on, who is the founder of Synergy Enterprises. And I'll put in a bit of an umbrella statement on what Synergy Enterprises does, but they essentially help companies achieve their climate goals and climate goals, as I said. But today, obviously, we've got Jill on, so we're going to be talking all about what Synergy Enterprises do and going into that more. And as well as that, I'll be interested to see and listen to Jill's insights on the changing business world and now companies really having to take into account those climate policies and climate goals. So thank you so much, Jill, for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I wanted to get started. So you founded Synergy Enterprises in 2008, so nearly 14 years ago. And obviously, unlike today, where climate change is a very much spoken about topic, back then it definitely wasn't near as much. So were you always interested in climate change? Did you do any research? Did you do any studies? How did you get into the space?
Well, I was always interested in the environmental space. So when I went to school for biology, there were some introductory courses at the time on climate change. And this was very, very new. These were some of the first university courses that were offered on this topic. And we were fortunate at our university to have one of the lead researchers from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So that's really where I learned about it. And I was also very interested in the business world. So I wanted to figure out how to bring those two things together. And that's where Synergy came from.
Unbelievable. So cool. So would you say taking those classes really propelled you to now where you are today in terms of like exploring that climate change within business?
I would say so, except that within those courses, it was really about the science of climate change. There were no courses at the time about what we can do to mitigate climate change within the business community. So that's something we had to really figure out and carve our own path in. At the time, the rhetoric was really about how business is bad for the environment and business just needs to stop being evil. And what I saw was that business owners wanted to make a difference, but they didn't know how. And so that's where the idea came around, well, what if we could play in that space? What if we could do something there? And that's really where it started. And I think that's where a lot of businesses start, is they see a gap. They see this, disconnect, and then they operate in that space.
No, unbelievable. Because like even now in 2022, this is still like very new concept, let alone 2008. So very, very innovative. So I wanted now, before we go on to like more talking about synergy, when you were like younger, university, high school, did you really envision that you'd be starting your own business?
I think I always was drawn to entrepreneurship. That wasn't a word I knew at the time, entrepreneurship, but I was always drawn to business. And I think, in high school, it really started with small things. I would organize fundraisers and, I did like a Christmas chocolate sale as a fundraiser for grad or something. I can't even really remember, but I remember having our garage full of chocolate at one point.
Wow.
And, just things like that just kind of prepare you in that sales world, I guess, and in the business world, just kind of understanding money in, money out, all the basics. So I guess those things did give me some preparation, and I was, always interested in giving back. So I would do fundraisers for the SPCA and little things like that, and it might be $500, but I do think that just doing extracurricular stuff and doing side projects is really what prepared me for it. There's the classroom stuff is fantastic to give you a foundation, but you really just got to find little ways to start to get your hands dirty and start to just try things.
Industry experience, hands-on.
Yeah.
So you touched on a bit before that you studied biology at school. So what did you study biology at university? Did you study anything else? What was that?
No, I studied biology, but I did take a lot of different electives because the traditional pathway, I guess, for a biologist, I knew I didn't want to do exactly that. I wanted to do something slightly different, a little off course. So I really took advantage of doing a general degree and then lots of electives in things that I was just interested in. And so, knowing that I wasn't necessarily going to be a doctor or wasn't, I didn't have this really strict path in my education. And that actually allowed me to pursue different curiosities. And I took like an environmental psychology course and just other courses that were completely outside of my regular degree path. And it was those courses that really started to point me towards, what my career would be in a different area that hadn't really been created yet.
No, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's still so new. And I can't believe that like in 2008, like you were really at the forefront of this new change. So now continuing on, obviously you mentioned before you took a climate change course, but that was more focused on the sciences. And you also mentioned how you're interested in business. So how did you like just come up with, these two interlink so much and they really can make a difference?
It was over many years of being in university. So I started with, I kind of want to get involved in something. And so I joined a local environmental club. And it was loaded with really interesting people. There was faculty involved and different professors and students that were more senior than I was and just were very, very passionate. And so I got to really kind of absorb from them and learn. And it started with just the smallest things, let's host a little workshop and let's, organize a little speaker event here and there on campus. And it just gave me an opportunity to really network and get plugged in and learn from so many people. So I probably spent a good 3 years just being a sponge and following those kind of trails of curiosity. And then, I was always kind of the person in the group that had more business experience from my previous life. So that was kind of a natural fit for me to offer something to the group. And so I just kind of leaned into that and asked a coffee shop if I could do a pilot project with them and said, could I try to green your business and see how that goes? And they were like, what? Like, no, this is so weird. But eventually, the owner really gave me a shot and said, okay, well, sure, let's try this. And so sometimes you just need the first person to let you try something. And it was just meant to be kind of a school project. And then different companies started asking me, like, can you do the same thing for my business? And that's really where Synergy came from.
Wow, that's unbelievable. So that was really like the seed to now this big tree you have with this business, which is so cool. So now you said you did that project and you saw it more as like a university project, and now it's really started to grow as a business. So could you tell us a bit more about what Synergy Enterprises does?
Yeah, we really focus on helping businesses decarbonize and become more sustainable companies. So, we're very much like boots on the ground that way. We help companies measure their environmental impact, and especially when it comes to emissions. And we look at charting, a pathway in terms of where are the big emission reduction opportunities, what technologies could serve that, what makes sense for this business to implement. And we'll say, well, here's some short, medium, and long-term things. Here's how much it's going to cost. These are some of the co-benefits. So we really do need to understand our clients and where they're coming from and what business they're operating in so that we can chart a plan for them that really makes sense. We may help them then implement those things or get funding for those things or, form partnerships and broaden the scope. So we'll work in a variety of sectors from, the aviation space, manufacturing, tourism and travel has always been a big one for us, working in those industries. Like marine tour operators, for example, a company and maybe they have 20 boats and they're like, well, we burn a lot of diesel, what can we do about that? So it's really getting into that nitty gritty and helping companies become leaders. And this is kind of one of our core beliefs that if we work for a variety of sectors and there's a few companies in each sector we work with that we help them really raise the bar and set the standard in their sector, then other companies will follow. And then our impact grows because we're not having to work with every single business, which we would love to do, but we would have to be a massive company, obviously. But instead, there's that peer influence piece where businesses are very inspired by other ones showing what's possible.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. And now, like, I kind of want to use as a segue, talking about, obviously, you're saying it kind of grew after you did that first helping that coffee shop with helping their business become more climate aware. And then you had other businesses coming, becoming more peer aware. So would you say now that's really contributing to the changing business landscape of companies really thinking, oh, wait, our customers, they're more climate conscious. Like, we want to be able to really connect with them and show that we're doing something about it.
Definitely. And I think I think there's a lot of assumption that businesses don't want to do it on their own, that they have to be pressured to do it. I don't see that. I see, and sure, that's true. Some businesses are doing it because there's pressure to do it. But so many just say, this is just a part of who we are. This is a part of our value set. Companies are made up of people, and at the leadership level, especially if, say, you're a marine tour operator and you take people out, snorkeling on the Great Barrier Reef. Well, it might not feel very awesome to be doing that while not taking responsibility for your own emissions. So I do think that for a lot of companies that we work with, especially ones really willing to become a leader in their sector, it's at the core of their values, and they want to start doing something about it. And in a lot of cases now, companies don't want to just say, oh, I got this certification, I picked the easiest one, and I have a green seal, and that makes me feel good. That doesn't make them feel good at the end of the day. They want to know, right down to the metrics, that I am on the right path. I am reducing my emissions, and I'm doing everything within my control to contribute to decarbonizing our whole economy. So I think that's a common misconception in the media that I don't see on a day-to-day basis, which is interesting.
No, that's very interesting. I had the opinions of the media, but that's now definitely changed it. So I'm curious, actually. So now I had a look on the website of Synergy Enterprises. Obviously, you help with carbon accounting, helping them set up key performance indicators. How do you gain these skills to be able to offer these services? Because you mentioned when you went to university, there was not really any courses which bridged climate change and business. So how did you gain those skills and really even think about it? Because I would have never thought of carbon accounting and all of these super cool concepts.
Yeah, that's a good question. There weren't a lot of courses, even outside of university, just in sort of the professional development space at the time. So it was a lot of learning on my own, definitely, doing a lot of research, building our own tools. We built our own carbon calculator that we still use and make better every year.
Wait, tell us about that.
Yeah, it's a very robust tool now because it's, 14 years in the making or however many years it's been. So really like building blocks, right? Every day is like another little Lego block that you put down and you build something. And that's really what business is all about is, and some Lego blocks you have to then, crumple up and burn, unfortunately, but eventually you do build something. Now it's fantastic. You can take, through the Greenhouse Gas Institute or through a number of different avenues, you can take really specific courses on learning about renewable energy, learning about carbon accounting, learning about decarbonization in different sectors. So there's much more education out there, but I find that you do need to add on to your conventional educational path and then kind of add on these badges or add on these specific niche courses usually offered by industry associations to kind of build up that skill set that you want.
No, that makes complete sense. And I'm now curious. So obviously, as you've, grown the business, you've had to employ more people. How have you gone about actually employing people and seeing them as a good fit? Obviously now it's quite niche working in climate change and business and those skills. So what do you look for as an employer?
First and foremost, I look for somebody who has the kind of attitude where they're just so excited about tackling these kinds of problems. They want to get into the nerdy stuff. They want to be a part of this, and they've got, the right kind of analytical, business, mathematical driven sort of mindset. And so Certainly look for that. Definitely culture fit, though. We really want somebody who we can see jiving with our team, who wants to work hard, but is not going to be competitive with other employees. They're going to be collaborative and work together. So it's really about having a super strong team that supports one another, because there's enough challenges out there with climate change. We don't need those challenges in the workplace.
No, that makes complete sense. And now I actually wanted to ask you about, you're saying you're quite like on the ground with your work, obviously helping businesses really do these things. So what does your day-to-day look like?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Every day is so different. And that's really what I do love about my job. Today I was looking at what it would take to plant like 7,000 hectares of mangroves in the Bahamas and how much carbon that could save. But, the day before, I was looking at a brewery and the different technologies to heat water for the brewing process. And so every day is something very different, because every business has a very different challenge. But I also spend a lot of time, with my team, working on the inner workings of the business, of course, which maybe isn't seen as the exciting stuff, working on company policies and, IT and all that stuff. That's just part of the job, and I do find it really fun. But every day is very different. It's a mix of working on projects and also just running the company and supporting the team.
So that's so cool, because you get to work, with the coolest technology, like all around the world. You're helping do amazing things, which I think is so, so amazing. And now I wanted to ask you about if you have any pieces of advice for young people who are perhaps thinking about maybe starting a company or looking to go into climate change business space.
Well, I think that carbon accounting is going to be a very fundamental part of business in the future. So that is a great skill to gain. Getting a familiarity with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, also, a very good framework that we're all, as companies and countries and nonprofits, we're all going to be working towards these goals until 2030. So it's a really, really important framework that I think is kind of becoming the common language of sustainable development and really what that means. So those are two really important, I think, areas to look at. But, some people, when they look at where we are now at Synergy, they're like, great, I need to do that. I need to start with, working with a marine tour operator and greening them. That's not how I started. I started with volunteering to put up posters for a nonprofit that I thought was cool. So, I think just start somewhere. And as long as you're surrounded by people that you find really interesting, that you put yourself in a learning environment and you're giving yourself some projects that can start with where you're at, it's just going to grow from there. So I would say just start, stay curious, at whatever you're doing in school, save 5% of your time to also participate in extracurricular stuff, and to not just study for every test, which is important. You need to study for your tests, but also to, watch some webinars, watch some documentaries, watch things that are just of interest to you, because, it's easy to just stay focused on your task list and not give yourself space to really pursue and learn about your own interests and what you can offer the world. So it's important to have that little bit of space as well. I know it's hard to do in school schedules, but it is so, so important. And I'm really glad I did. That's how my whole career developed.
No, that's great. Thank you so much, Jill, for coming on the podcast today. Really appreciate you talking to us. And thank you everyone for watching and listening. And we'll see you all the next podcast episode.